Hi, everyone. Today I want to talk about Russian cursive because when I'm on Reddit or other language forums, I see this question all the time. Is my Russian cursive correct? And sometimes the question is it even important to learn cursive? Do I even need it? And today I'm gonna offer my perspective, which is also a teacher's perspective because I am a teacher with many years of experience. So in this video, I want to share my thoughts on why learning Russian cursive matters, when you should learn it, and how to do it effectively. So, if that's your question, if you're wondering whether or not you should invest time and effort into learning Russian cursive, let's check it out. So, the short answer to the question of is cursive important? The short answer is yes, it's very important. Russians write in cursive all the time. It was one of my own culture shocks when I moved to the US because I realized that people here don't really use cursive in their daily life. Instead, Americans write more with something like neat printed letters. And in Russia, it's the opposite. If you write something by hand, it's almost always in cursive. So then I also see some people say, like, it's the 21st century. Everybody types now. Do we really need it? And yes, we do type a lot on our phones, like in messages on the computer. But in the Russian culture, handwriting is still very much alive. So in schools where Russian kids learn how to write, they learn how to write in cursive from the start. And if you think about like when else will we see something handwritten? Let's say you go to Russia and you stay with a host family, and the host family wants to write you a note because they're not at home and they want to let you know where to find something to eat. That note will be written in cursive. Or let's say you're going to some Russian office and the clerk stepped out for a second, for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. There will be most likely a handwritten announcement about that. And once again, it will be in cursive because that was something out of the ordinary. Maybe the clerk didn't have time to, type it up and print it on the printer. Then something like letters or cards between friends and loved ones will be handwritten. And again, we mostly type now, I know, but let's say it's a birthday card. It will be, kind of like very, very not personal if it's typed. People in Russia will write it in cursive, or maybe someone will send you a love letter. It will be most likely on paper and handwritten. And, like little things like notes, reminders that people leave for each other, any type of writing that we do by hand very quickly is going to be in cursive. And another thing, cursive is so important and such a big part of the Russian writing that you will also see elements of cursive letters or maybe even something written in cursive in graphic design. So something like on signs or on ads or some kind of an announcement of some kind for a cafe or something like that, like a menu. And I want to say, just like in every other culture, everyone's handwriting is different. Some have a neat handwriting, some have a very messy handwriting. But for Russia, it's all going to be in cursive. Whether neat or messy, it's going to be in cursive. Actually, if you search Russian cursive handwriting, you'll see a huge variety in styles. And if you're gonna search something like Russian doctor's handwriting, you will be even scared to look at it because, and to tell you the truth, Russians also have trouble reading doctor's handwriting. Now, and I think if you look at these examples, it will make it kind of like feel like it's such a big challenge, like it's very challenging. But I also think you will find it kind of fascinating, almost like you are decoding something like a special agent. So I don't know, I love cursive. And from my own perspective, why I love cursive so much, it's just faster. It's just like so easy to just like and write something in cursive rather than like write print letters one after another. And I actually have some trouble filling out forms, when it's a requirement to fill it out in block letters, like my hand literally gets tired and my writing is so much slower compared to how I'm writing when I'm just writing something in cursive. And I would say that would be kind of like the default way of writing for most Russians. So, is cursive important in the Russian or for the Russian culture? Absolutely. But do you need to learn it? So the question is, should you learn Russian cursive? And the answer really depends on your goals. Let's say you're just starting to learn Russian and you're not sure how far you'll go. Don't worry about cursive. Just don't worry about it at all. It's neat, it's cute, but it's not something you need. Focus on the basics, focus on reading, focus on speaking, understanding the basic grammar, understanding kind of like the basic spoken language. So there is really no need for you to start spending time on cursive right away. At the same time, if you reach the point, or maybe you reached that point already, where you're like, I am serious about learning Russian. I plan to travel to Russia, maybe to live there for a while, maybe even get a degree from Russia, then yes, you should invest time in learning cursive. At the very least, you should learn to recognize cursive letters so you can read handwritten notes and signs and everything else I was talking about before. That doesn't mean you need to write beautifully or that your cursive needs to be perfect. As I said, even Russian people have this huge variety of styles. And messy handwriting just has to be readable. And basic recognition will help you avoid unnecessary confusion, especially since handwritten cursive can look very different from printed text. So it's just a matter of kind of like a pragmatic reason to learn cursive. It will make your life easier if you ever go to Russia. Now, the next question is, when should you learn Russian cursive? If you decide to learn Russian cursive, if you decide that it's important to your goals, the timing is important. I'm telling you this as a teacher. I have experimented enough with my students over the years to tell you that first you need to master printed Russian. If you start cursive too early, it can confuse you. It will slow down your progress. It will add stress to learning a very difficult language. You really don't need it. So first of all, focus on building strong reading skills so you can confidently recognize printed letters and sounds, like you are totally good at it. Then move on to cursive. So once you're comfortable reading everything that's like written in print, like a book or a textbook, transition to cursive, and it will be much easier because you will be only learning a different way to write rather than the connection between the letter and the sound and the reading rule. So reading has to be mastered first. Now, I also want to offer you some tips about on how to learn Russian cursive effectively. And this video will be the first one on the playlist of multiple videos where I explain or actually show you how to write in Russian cursive and offer you some practice. So if you're ready to start, first of all, my first advice to you, be realistic. I love when my students have this beautiful, perfect Russian handwriting. Some of them have handwriting or like Russian cursive is so much better than mine. But not everyone can do that. And all of these students that have this perfect Russian handwriting, they usually have a very beautiful handwriting in their own language. In my case, it's like when they're writing English. So if your handwriting is not exactly perfect in your primary system of writing, don't expect that your Russian handwriting will be perfect. So your goal is always readability, not perfection. So it's easy to read it, not that it looks like this perfect standard Russian handwriting, because as I said, even Russians have a huge variety of writing styles. So once you decide to learn cursive, very first step is to learn the individual letters and how they're written in cursive. So you have to get comfortable with how each letter looks before moving on to writing words or connecting letters. But once you are comfortable with writing letters separately, then a very important thing is to practice letter connections. And in this playlist, on my channel, I have a long video where I go into every possible connections in a kind of, I think, a very simple system. It might look like it's a complicated system, but once you master it, I think your connections will look very good, because most mistakes in cursive happen because people connect letters incorrectly. And that can lead to misunderstandings and make your writing hard to read. Now, you might ask, will they still be able to understand what I'm writing? Yes, they will. Russians will understand what you're writing, even if, let's say, you make a wrong connection between O and ya, and it reads like ya. They will be able to read it. But at the same time, when native speakers look at something that doesn't look right, because as I said, there are very different styles of handwriting. At the same time, they would still be kind of like similar in connections where you don't really misread. It might be hard to read because it's a messy handwriting, but once you do, you don't really misread it because it's connected in a way that letters look exactly how they're supposed to look. And then when foreigners write and they add their own elements where letters start looking like different letters, that kind of adds to this cognitive dissonance in the head of a Russian native speaker. Now, is it bad? Not really. We'll survive, we'll totally understand it. But our goal is to make the communication easier, whether it's in writing or in speaking. So if you can fix something and it's an easy fix, do it. So, and one of the easiest things to fix about mistakes in Russian cursive is to master the connections. Now, that being said, don't stress over the perfection, because it might be just hard for some people to master these connections, especially if handwriting is just overall not your style. So in that case, I also have a video on kind of like variations in cursive. And one of the tips that I give you is don't connect the letters. If connections are too tricky, just write each letter separately, still in cursive. That's why it's important to learn how to write each letter in cursive. But just don't connect them. It still will be readable and it will look very nice. So that's my advice to you. And overall, like if you think about the Russian cursive, and let's say if it's just hard or something that you don't really quite want to do, I would say it's still important to learn it, but in this case, prioritize recognition. So even if you never write in cursive yourself, learn how to read it, and it will be already a huge advantage, and just kind of like a must for Russian language learners. Okay, if you guys are still here, let me know in the comments. Do you already know Russian cursive, or are you just starting? Maybe you checked out some of my videos. I would love to hear from you. And just to wrap it up, should you learn cursive? If you are serious about Russian, yes, but don't stress about making it perfect. It really is just a tool of writing and nothing more. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next in, I don't know, whenever I make the next video. Пока.